100 Years of Solitude. Author, Gabriel García Márquez. 100 Years of Solitude, by Gabriel García Márquez, first published in 1967, is a landmark novel in Latin American literature and a masterpiece of magical realism. It tells the multi-generational story of the Buendía family, set in the fictional town of Macondo. The novel intertwines the history of the family with Colombia's broader political and social developments, blending fantastical elements with realistic ones to explore themes of fate, solitude, power, and cyclical history. Part 1: The founding of Macondo and the origins of the Buendía family. The story begins with José Arcadio Buendía, the patriarch of the Buendía family, and his wife, Ursula Iguaran, who leave their hometown to found Macondo, a remote and isolated village. Macondo is initially depicted as an idyllic, Eden-like place, untouched by outside influence. José Arcadio is a visionary and a dreamer, obsessed with scientific discoveries and alchemy, encouraged by a mysterious band of traveling gypsies led by Melquiades, who becomes a recurring figure throughout the novel. However, José Arcadio's scientific pursuits begin to consume him, leading to his mental decline, while Ursula assumes a more practical role in managing the household and village. From the beginning, the Buendía family is marked by a sense of doom. José Arcadio and Ursula are cousins, and Ursula fears their union will produce a child with a pig's tail, foreshadowing the strange and tragic events that will plague future generations. Over the years, the Buendías become the dominant family in Macondo, but their fate is marked by a recurring pattern of isolation, ambition, and internal conflict. Part 2: The next generation and the expansion of Macondo. The second generation of Buendías is represented by José Arcadio Buendía's children, José Arcadio, the son, Orleano, and Amaranta. José Arcadio, the eldest, is a strong and rebellious figure who eventually leaves Macondo to travel, only to return later, transformed into a giant and mysterious man. Colonel Orleano Buendía, the middle son, becomes a central character in the novel, a visionary revolutionary who leads 32 armed uprisings and becomes a symbol of political struggle. However, despite his fame and numerous children, Orleano remains emotionally distant and isolated, reflecting the novel's recurring theme of solitude. Macondo begins to grow as outside influences seep into the town. Foreign merchants, particularly banana companies, bring modernization and exploitation to the region. However, this contact with the outside world is destructive rather than beneficial. As political conflicts escalate in Colombia, the Buendía family becomes increasingly embroiled in the country's civil wars and revolutions. Colonel Orleano Buendía, who fights for liberal causes, gradually loses his idealism and succumbs to a nihilistic sense of futility. Amaranta, the only daughter, lives a life marked by emotional repression and bitterness. Her unrequited love for Pietro Crespi, a charming foreigner, shapes her tragic fate, and she ultimately spends her life in self-imposed solitude, unwilling or unable to love anyone. Part 3: The Cycle of History and the Banana Company Massacre. The arrival of a foreign banana company marks a significant turning point for Macondo. The company represents imperialism and exploitation, and it brings with it laborers, social unrest, and economic inequality. The most devastating moment comes with the Banana Company Massacre, based on a historical event in Colombia. When the workers strike for better conditions, the company, with the support of the national government, stages a brutal massacre, killing hundreds of laborers. The bodies are erased from public memory, and the official story is that no massacre occurred. This act of violence and its subsequent denial reflect the novel's themes of historical amnesia and cyclical violence. The town of Macondo, which once seemed so promising and vibrant, begins its slow decline. The town becomes plagued by endless rain, and the influence of the outside world proves destructive. In parallel, the Buendía family also experiences a downward spiral, as each successive generation repeats the mistakes of the past. The Buendías are unable to escape the patterns of solitude and disillusionment that define their lives. Part 4: Repeating Cycles and the Inescapable Fate of the Buendías. As the novel progresses, it becomes clear that the Buendía family is caught in a seemingly unbreakable cycle of repetition. The same names recur across generations, Orleanos and José Arcadios, each displaying traits of their predecessors and repeating the same mistakes. The characters are often trapped in their own obsessions and doomed to loneliness. The theme of solitude is omnipresent. Each generation of Buendías, despite their ambitions and desires, finds themselves cut off from meaningful connections with others. A key figure in the later part of the novel is Remedios the Beauty, one of the Buendía descendants, who is so beautiful that men die of love for her. She is depicted as a pure, otherworldly figure who is uninterested in the physical world. In one of the novel's most fantastical moments, Remedios ascends into the sky and disappears, untouched by the violence and corruption around her. Another important character is Fernanda del Carpio, who marries into the Buendía family and brings a rigid, religious worldview that contrasts with the more liberal and chaotic nature of the Buendías. Her marriage to Orleano II represents the clash between tradition and freedom, but it, too, ends in solitude. Part 5, The Prophecy and the End of the Buendía line. The novel's conclusion reveals that the fate of the Buendía family has been preordained. Melquiades, the gypsy who befriended José Arcadio Buendía in the beginning, left behind a set of mysterious parchments that no one could decipher. As the last of the Buendías, Orleano, the great-great-grandson of José Arcadio Buendía, finally deciphers the parchments. He realizes that they contain the entire history of the Buendía family, written in advance. The prophecy states that the Buendía family is doomed to end in destruction. In a final act of tragic fate, Orleano has a child with Amaranta Ursula, unknowingly committing incest. The child is born with the long-feared pig's tail, fulfilling the family's curse. The child dies soon after birth, and Orleano realizes that the family has come full circle. In the final pages, as Orleano reads the prophecy, the town of Macondo is destroyed in a whirlwind. The prophecy had foretold that the Buendía family, like the town of Macondo itself, would be erased from history, forgotten as if they had never existed. Major themes. Cyclical history and fate. The novel is deeply concerned with the idea of cyclical time, suggesting that history repeats itself and that individuals are often powerless to escape their inherited destinies. The Buendías, despite their efforts, are trapped in patterns of repetition. Solitude. Solitude is perhaps the central theme of the novel. Each character experiences isolation in some form, whether it be emotional, physical, or spiritual. Even in moments of triumph or connection, the Buendías remain fundamentally alone, unable to break free from their solitude. Magical realism. The novel is a prime example of magical realism, a literary style that blends the ordinary with the fantastical. Events such as the ascension of Remedios the Beauty, the never-ending reign, and the survival of characters through seemingly impossible circumstances all contribute to the novel's dreamlike atmosphere. Colonialism and power. The arrival of the Banana Company represents the destructive impact of colonialism and imperialism on Latin American societies. The massacre and subsequent cover-up highlight the exploitation and erasure of local people and their histories. Conclusion. 100 Years of Solitude is a rich, complex novel that explores the cyclical nature of history, the inescapability of fate, and the human experience of isolation. Through the rise and fall of the Buendía family, Gabriel García Márquez creates a timeless narrative that captures the beauty and tragedy of life in a world where reality and myth intertwine. The novel's exploration of time, memory, and solitude makes it one of the most celebrated works of world literature. The end.